That's good.
Greetings, ADNC family. Emma Ansah here, coming to you live with my esteemed colleague Tej Wilson. How
What's
you
that,
doing,
man?
Tej? How you
Man, listen,
doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm ready to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, it's a good one, and it is
Mhm.
Friday.
Right.
So today's topic. I came across this video. It was one of the folks, and she has conceded that not only is she an anti-black racist, but she says
Mm.
all of them are. So the complete avalanche Avengers are
Mm.
all
Allies
racist.
Avengers, what's with the names? Look, I'm just going, I just keep it to the point. All right, let me, you always got them. Let's go. I can't wait to hear what you got to say.
The folks.
What-
Okay, so let's listen to what she has to say, and then we will chat some and just break it down. So here we go.
All racist. Every single one of us who look like me who are watching this video, we are racist. And let me explain what I mean by that. Because if you would have told me that a few years ago, I would have come out of my corner swinging saying, no way, I am not. I have worked in the criminal justice system for decades and I've seen the systemic racism there and fought against it. I have biracial children and I have seen the way the world looks at my children who are of a minority race versus my children who look like me. And I would have said, no way. But here is the thing. The more I learn, the more I realize just how much I don't know. Because there are two types of racism. There's the kind of racism that comes from the hate in your heart. And I don't have that. I never have. And I suspect very many of you don't have it either. But there is another kind of racism that comes from ignorance. And that abounds in my life. Even me who thought that I knew a lot about seeing systemic racism. But here's what I've learned. The more I learn, the more I realize how unintentionally racist I have been in so many things. And it is on us now, white people, to educate ourselves. We're never going to fully grasp what it means to live in a world where you are the minority and where the system has been set up for hundreds and hundreds of years to benefit people who look like me and to oppress people who look like my children. But we have got to educate ourselves. I'm going to start listing several books and documentaries that I've been watching to educate myself. And I hope any of you who really want this world to be a better place, we have got to start with the foundation that all men and women are created equal. And we have got to set new rules for how we move in this society if we're going to have that. I need to apologize to the friends, the clients, the people I interacted with for so many years because I thought I wasn't racist, and I'm not, as far as the part that comes out of hate. But the part that is born from ignorance, I'm sorry. I should have done better, and I am learning. For those of you who are watching this who are minorities, please put your advice in the comments. Books, documentaries, movies, or just your life experiences. I want to learn and I want to help others learn because I don't want you or your children or my children to live in a world that is designed to fail them. Okay, so let's start this series of educating ourselves in order to make this world a better place. Go love your neighbor.
Well, well, well. Well, well, well.
You know,
It's quite
let me
interesting.
just start. Let me just start by saying this. She has conceded, like I said, that she's racist, and she's listing the two types of racism and what have you. And then she keeps referring to us as minorities. So I'm like, yeah, clearly there's still some learning that needs to happen here because how are you referring to us as minorities? Right.
Right.
Anyhow, I'm going to start by saying that. Tell me what you think about this.
I think that I can discern sincere motivation versus somebody tripping over words. And I'm going to have I'm going to tell you something that happened to me when I was at Florida A&M University. For those of y'all who don't know, I am from a historically black college, Florida A&M, down in Tallahassee. Shout out to the mighty, mighty Rattler family. And there was a very black-centered organization on my campus called the Student Alliance for Cultural Development. And let me tell you something. There was a debate on campus one day. I never said this out loud to anybody who was not there, about whether or not white people were human. About whether or not white people were human. And of course, the question was, if you're human, what's up with the inhumanity? See, it wasn't the basis that they have dehumanized us. It wasn't about genetics. It wasn't about the shape of our skulls. You know, they used to try to say that our skulls were more like large primates rather than humans. They used to have all of these pseudoscience objectives, but that wasn't what we base it on. We base it on, how can a human genocide an entire population of people from a continent almost? How can a human do a transatlantic slave trade situation? How can a human create a nuclear bomb and vaporize Nagasaki and Hiroshima? What's up with the if you're human, where's your humanity? And they had concluded that they were not. And I stood in opposition to that. And I said, oh, yes, they are. Because if you are not human, you don't have karma, and you're not accountable for your actions. Oh, you're human. You're very human. In fact, the humanity comes out in the guilt. And I see guilt here. And a lot of white folks, when they see this kind of guilt, be like, see, I'm not down with that white guilt stuff. And I say, oh, no, 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 no. Guilt is good. Guilt is good. Guilt is proof of conscience. Guilt is your moral compass saying there is, in fact, a magnetic north. This woman has guilt. And it's different than shame. Guilt and shame are two different things. You see, the problem is when the popular narratives and the mind programming that Europeans have around this feeling that they get when they're confronted with the truth about racism is when they can't tell the difference between the two. Guilt seeks to correct the wrong. Shame seeks to bury the wrong. And the right wing, too many times, takes this natural human guilt program that is elicited in white folks when they hear about our history and the atrocities that have been committed in the name of whiteness and racism, and they turn it to shame, and they be like, I'm a deflect, I'm going to gaslight, I'm going to bury it. What this woman is experiencing is a very human thing where she says, I want to seek to right the wrong, and seeking to right the wrong is the basis of humanity. And I'll say this before I get off of this particular soapbox. What I'm seeing here is a request to say, how do I get back to my humanity? Because whiteness was created to dehumanize those who don't fit that description. And I've said to people who are invested in the concept of whiteness, because it's just a construct, as James Baldwin told us, you can have whiteness or you can have humanity, but you can't have both at the same time. She's seeking a way out of whiteness back into humanity. And that's what I heard from that. How about you?
Yes, I agree with you 100%. I will say this. Having grown up here in Quebec, not there now, but I grew up in Quebec, and, you know, facing racism from as early as, well, I can remember, which is like 5.5, 6. And not really understanding what that N word was, like the first time I heard it, and then also just really not understanding why these you know, white kids were calling us those names and saying, my mommy and my daddy said I can't play with you, I can't touch you, this and that, and then also just, you know, physical violence and you know, verbal violence and all that other stuff. I can appreciate when I come across somebody like this who is using her social platform. And by the way, can we talk about Donald Trump behind her? Like, were you trying to say that, hey, Donald Trump is one too? Like, she literally had him as her backdrop. Just a side note. But I can appreciate when people will do that, because to
Hmm.
me, I just feel like, okay, you are really willing to relinquish your,
Hmm.
privilege card. But at the same time, I'm listening to her and she's talking about having biracial children and stuff. So I just wonder, is it because you've experienced what your child may be
Mm.
going through, or now that you have children that, whether or not their mommy is one of the folks, they're still going to step out in the street and be identified as a Black person. So is
Right.
it that reality as well? So I always question,
Hmm.
these realities. So I'm listening to her talk, and she keeps talking about her kids, and she said that she can notice the glaring difference in the way her kids that look
Hmm.
like her are treated and her kids that are biracial are treated. So I feel like that is probably the main
That
driver
probably
for her.
did wake her up. Yeah.
Right, right. And so whatever way it works, hey, I'm here for it. As far
Right.
as the her wanting to be educated and her educating herself, great, because I've always said two things. This has always been my request from the folks who are, outstanding anti-Black racists. The two things that I always say, and she's putting it in two categories. She's saying the ignorant racist and, the obvious one, right? So we're talking. She puts herself in the ignorant racist bucket.
Hmm.
So what I always say is the two things: education, but also listen, because there's many times where, even like using me again as an example, I have locks, and for whatever
Right.
reason, some of the folks are very fascinated by my locks.
Right.
So they will come, and before even asking, you're invading my personal space, and it's, "Can I touch your hair?" Uh,
Right.
no, no,
And
no,
then they
wait,
just
hang
does it.
on. Right, hang on. We're not doing that, okay?
Right.
And when I try to explain it, instead of trying to listen, this is what and I know this may be a simpler example, but my point is, it's a microaggression, and
Hmm.
when I'm trying to explain it, instead of listening to what I'm saying, it's automatically the fragility steps out. And it's like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. My best friend is Black.
My
My
children are
boyfriend is
Black. I
Black.
got.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
My coworker is Black. And it's like, wait, you have already stop switched and you've checked out of what I'm trying to explain to you. So I would add to her, you're educating and you're asking us to give you more educational tips and all of that stuff. Great. But two things: one, listen. And two, what are you doing with all that education? You said you're going to drop some tips and stuff. Who else are you talking to in your circle? She's
Right.
apologizing for any role she played in racism within her work. It sounds
Hmm.
like she was in the criminal justice system, because she mentioned
Right.
that.
Right.
And she mentioned that she fought against it. What was your fight? Like, there's, I literally wish I can sit down with this woman. But anyway, I'm gonna zip it for now, and you can share your thoughts about what I feel about this.
For sure. Well, listen, I think that you, as a Black woman, are going to encounter a different kind of racism because it's got this undertint of the fact that because you're a woman, they feel that you're more approachable. See, the kind of racism that I be experiencing be that threat racism when they see me, and yo, I didn't even realize how much I had adapted to this. By the time I first got any testosterone whatsoever, by the time I got any bass in my voice whatsoever, and I'm talking about I was little, they was crossing the street. All of a sudden, locked doors. I remember the white lady grab her purse. I remember, I go into a coffee shop and the white kids is bouncing around, and then mom sees me and suddenly she's like, Timmy, Timmy. You know what I'm saying? Like y'all want your kid? But it's that threat racism that I get. And these are the microaggressions that still happen. I remember I'm walking through the park and the old white couple see me, and old folks gotta be careful about how many steps they take because they tired already. They took a whole nother route through that park when they seen me, right?
They all of
So
a sudden got some energy and
all of
pep
a
in
sudden
their
they got
step.
some energy. They're gonna pick up a couple more thousand steps and go the other direction when they see me in the park. And this still be happening to me, right? And so what I have discerned from it is that a lot of the racism and ignorance is projection and lack of self-awareness. And then I had to ask myself, what is it about the kind of ignorance that lends itself automatically to racism? And the answer is the third form of racism that she didn't talk about was systemic or structural.
Mm-hmm.
Systemic structural racism is always in the background, and it doesn't leave behind a racial slur. It don't leave behind a swastika spray painted on the wall. It doesn't leave behind a bruise on the eye. But what it does is it generates outcomes that are patternistic with discrimination. So these structures are there in the background, always running. Institutional racism always in the background running. And this is why they be like, you actually have to actively be anti-racist, because it takes the people power to overcome the power of the machine that's set up in default racist mode. And so when most white folks say, I'm not racist, I don't have a racist bone in my body, what they're really saying is what she said in the beginning. I don't experience myself as being hateful, or I'm not a part of an explicit hate group. I've never joined the Proud Boys or the Ku Klux Klan, right?
Right.
That's what they mean. But the ignorance portion is the blindness to the default modes that are already in place, that have been set up by 400 plus years of an apartheid state. And I like to explain this because I speak at universities about this. If you look at the time that we first landed here in 1619 to 1865, when they were freed down in Texas, and then if you add on to that the 100 years of Jim Crow, we have been either in slavery or apartheid in these here United States for 5 times as long as we have been in non-explicit apartheid. But those systems didn't go away just because the law changed. They've always been in the background. And I say, if it's been within one human lifetime, it ain't been long. There are people alive today who were children during the lynchings. People alive today who were the children that spat on the Little Rock Nine and Dr. Martin Luther King. They are now judges, police chiefs, heads of universities and corporations that keep this systemic thing going. And if we don't address that actively, then there is no living with the folk.
That's the bottom line. And there's another one that I want to add too, which is that they're a product of their environment oftentimes.
Straight up.
And when I talk about, again, being 6 years old, they learn that from home. Because
someplace, right?
Yeah, right. Because when you're 6, and you see these examples all the time, where you see little babies going up to a black baby and they hug each other and what have you. But
Right.
and we know that children mimic their parents. So whatever they see, that's what they do. Whatever they hear, they will repeat it. So, when you have parents who are anti-Black racists, then they are products of that environment. And then they go into the world thinking the same way. Sometimes as they grow, they learn, but oftentimes they become Proud Boys, or they become Nationalist 13 or Seven Sons, or all of our favorite people that love to go marching around North America. So there's that as well. And then there's also this other thing that I always ask. And sometimes when I have these discussions with some of the folks, I always ask this question when they come back at me and say, well, my best friend is Black. I say to them, okay, well, let me ask you a question. If you were walking down the street with your best friend and somebody yelled out the N-word to your best friend, what would you do? How would you defend that best friend? Are you in that position, or do you feel like you can step up for your best friend and defend her, you looking like the person who called your friend the N-word, one to another that looks like the same, and say, hey, don't do that. That's my friend. How many of them can we say would do that? And I'm only talking about the ones who are anti-Black racists, okay? Because I don't want people saying I say all, because I get messages all the time from the folks saying, why do you hate me? Why do you hate me? And my response is always, I don't hate you.
Mm,
I do not hate you
for
as
sure.
an individual. It is the conduct of
Right.
some that look like you,
Mm,
right? And that is what we are talking about here. So, I
right.
always ask that question, and oftentimes in theory, they say, "Oh, yes, I would." How many times do we see a black person being brutalized?
Right.
Or somebody's just yelling it out at the top of their lungs and everybody just sitting there like it's just another day on the subway,
For sure.
right? So
Look, I mean, you said
learned
a whole.
behavior. I'm just saying that's another facet of it.
Oh yeah, listen, learned behavior is a real thing, and it's also what I learned when I worked with kids. Now listen, me being born in the skin that I was in, my first experience with racism was when I was a kid. I never forget these two Caucasian little boys at the park when I had just moved into my new neighborhood. They were Chad and Christopher. I'll never forget Chad and
You
Christopher.
even remember the
I
names.
remember Chad and Christopher. It's the first time I heard the N word, and I ran home to my mom, like, what do this mean? Chad and Christopher kept calling me that, and they wouldn't let me get on the slide with them. And so they were, I knew their energy was mean, but I didn't know what the word meant. And so I have had one encounter after the next to the point that I have lost count, including me being beat up by the police when I was 22, which sent me into a very, very, very dark place. But here's what ended up happening to me. Also in my childhood, right when I was going to the place where it was like F all of them, there would be one in my life in a place where I couldn't avoid them that was cool in the fan and didn't know that I was going through it the way I was going through it. And what I realized once I got older and worked with children is that it can be learned at a young age. It can also be unlearned at a young age. And it's not white genetics I have a problem with. It isn't their skin. It's not their hair or their nose or their eyes. It is what the systems of racism have made of those features that they cannot control that values them over my very life. And so let's look at the mindset that created it. Because when I look at individual actors, it's almost like the Matrix. Like Neo, when he's fighting the police, any one of them could turn into Agent Smith, right? So it's not necessarily the individual that's the problem. It's the Agent Smith program that could be any one of them. That's my issue. And the Agent Smith programming is the unconscious racism that we all ingest. Because so we talked about ignorance as racism. We talked about hatred as racism. We talked about systems as racism. And then the fourth kind, internalized racism for those who are the targets of racism. Black folks who have ingested the paradigm of inferiority from those who made them to feel inferior. And that, we call that cooning, right? That we you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But those of us who have that, and here's what I found out, to varying degrees, we all have to unpack a certain level of it. We got hit with it with different doses. But mine, for example, looked like shame. And I'm talking about, man, whenever some hood would happen, I'm at the club, these boys start fighting, somebody start shooting. I'm like, man, we can't have nothing. What's wrong with black folk? You know what I'm saying? That was what, so mine didn't look like cooning. It didn't look like I'm about to go throw my folks under the bus for white approval. But I did have to unpack, what's with our behavior? So these systems work together in unison. They form a holistic environment through which racism is perpetuated. And I think that this is one point of awareness. I'm glad she's having a conversation, but we having this conversation in a broader sense to realize this is the water we swim in. And if we're not careful, then it could end up lending to it in all kinds of ways. But it is learned nonetheless.
Exactly.
Just like you said, it is picked up upon, and nobody be born with that in them. It's
Nope.
picked up.
It is picked up. And the other thing too is you're talking about experiences that you had, which again, when being beaten up by the police, that is um just beyond reprehensible. Like, to me, I
Yeah.
just find it to be just the most despicable act of just don't even get me started. Like,
Yeah, I feel you.
there are so many things that I just can't say that I would like to say. So,
Already.
but even like you just explained an example, and the same with me. And I will say this, that I have triggers. I still
Hmm.
have triggers to this day. Just
Hmm.
like you said, it took you into a dark place. I still have triggers to this day.
Hmm.
And it has caused me to have barriers even up, and
Hmm.
trust issues, that I can come to a certain level, but I draw a line in the sand, right?
Right.
And that's just because of, you when you think growing up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and we're now 2026, and we are, not only are we still seeing it all the time, we're still reporting on it. And we're not just reporting on it in North America, we're reporting on it globally. So,
Right.
for me, there are so many triggers. And
Mm.
I like you have we had street brawls every single day just to avoid
Right.
getting hurt, and we had no choice. We always
Hmm.
won, by the way. Thank
Yeah,
you.
right,
But
right. You got to chuck them. You got to chuck these
yes,
things if you want to
yeah,
stay alive out here sometime.
absolutely. And eventually they realized, you know what? These black people aren't going anywhere, and we're tired
Right.
of getting beaten up. So
Right.
they eventually just had to just either leave us alone or
Hmm.
become friends with us. But I
Right.
still struggled with trust and all of that stuff all the way through to my adulthood.
I don't
And
blame you.
I feel like the last time I really lost my temper was with a
Hmm.
woman that I worked for a company in downtown Toronto, and I was in the elevator with a group of coworkers that were all the folks, and I was the only black woman in the
Hmm.
elevator. And we worked in a building where there was like fashion designers, so they always had like these sample sales. So there were all these, very wealthy fashion people that were coming in and out, right? Getting samples. And this very wealthy looking older woman got on the elevator, and we were talking, me and my
Hello.
windstorm going on here. Are you
Right.
there? We have a major windstorm going on, and it keeps cutting out our internet. Sorry, folks, but we're here.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm in the elevator now, and she kept staring at me. And she was like giving me the worst, most dirtiest, filthiest look. And I already knew what that was because, again, when you grow up going through it day in and day out, you can spot it. You can smell it a mile away. Okay. So she continued to stare at me, glare at me, and then eventually she finally said, "We're living in unusual times, aren't we?" And I knew what she was talking about. The folks who were with me didn't, because, well, of course they didn't, right? Um, it's that blind, you don't live this experience, so you'll never understand where this person's going.
Hmm.
So, and I just ignored her, although my blood was boiling. Okay. I just ignored her. She repeated it. I ignored her. She repeated it. I ignored her. We were going from the ninth floor to the ground floor. We finally get to the ground floor. And she then said, "You know why I'm saying we live in unusual times? Because I have to ride the elevator with a you know what." Um, and I got triggered, and it took me back to the days where I used to get into, rock fights and all that other stuff with the folks in Quebec, right?
Woo.
So, I just turned around and I walked back to her, and she did not see it coming at all. But with everything in me, I just gave her the biggest right cross across her
Dang.
face, and she was shocked. And it was so strong that her whole head shifted.
You
It
slid.
was
Woo!
one of those.
Dang.
And I'm not, by the way, I am not promoting violence, okay? I'm just saying I was very triggered by it because I knew where it was coming from. And so the folks
Mm.
that I was with were equally as shocked. They're like, "What? Why did you do that?" And then so of course I had to have a sit down and explain where this was coming from. But these were people that actually listened. They didn't go to defense, and they were like, "I'm so sorry, I did not know." You know, I did not realize that that's what that was.
Did this white woman call you the N-word?
Yeah, she said, because when we got to the bottom, she was tired of me just ignoring her. It was bothering her,
Oh,
right?
it's bothering her
And
that you
then
didn't
she
want to
said,
engage with her.
I'm
Oh.
saying these times were unusual because I never thought there'd be a day where I would have to ride the elevator with an N word. Those were her words, verbatim.
I
And
bet that she never thought there'd be a day where she'd get knocked out by one either. How about that?
I saw red,
I
okay?
bet you
So
did.
yeah, I literally was like, and then she said she was gonna go call the police, blah blah blah. And I was like, go ahead. Y'all think we all look alike anyway? Good luck. I kind of just kept it moving, and I'm not like I said, I'm not one to. Usually, if I'm gonna combat, it'll be with my words, and my
Mhm.
words do cut. But I was just giving an example of how I can be triggered sometimes.
That's a
Um,
hell of a trigger. That ain't no trigger, and she tried you, and she found out that is an FAFO moment. Y'all know what them initials mean. I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm not surprised that it did
no,
at all.
No, and I always say here in Canada, the racism here is more covert than it is overt.
Right.
However, we're starting to see more and more and more of the overt coming out. We're called the N word all the time in conduct, in systemic biases.
Let's
In
talk
just
about that.
yeah, the
Yeah.
systemic. Oh my gosh, not getting that job because I don't know, I've got locks or my hair is too kinky or something. So, the blonde haired, blue eyed girl gets the job. Or I'm in this position, not getting promoted. And then somebody else comes in that's one of the folks, and I end up training that person, and that person gets promoted. All of those kinds of systemic barriers that we face in healthcare,
Oh,
in
you.
law enforcement, in the workplace. I mean, it's baked in, okay?
Well,
And then
well,
of
let me.
course I talk about microaggressions.
Mhm. Sis, let me tell you, there was a study done about the rise in right wing fascism across the Western world. And they all have to do with one thing: the declining birth rate of Euro
Yes.
descended people. It has
Yes.
everything to do with it. There is a gigantic fear of being a minority because they know how they've treated minorities. And they have set up race as a zero sum game. Race was set up in a time where win-wins weren't even a thing. Race was set up in a time where you had to be a winner take all kind of situation. They didn't even have a word for genocide. They just made entire peoples disappear. So now they're seeing what looks like to them the walls closing in, and they want to fight it. But here's the thing: the only tools they have to fight back are the systemic tools that they say don't exist. This is the craziest thing about what I see happening right now. These same people that say systemic racism don't exist will then use those systems in a racist way to prevent themselves from being a minority.
Yep.
So here's what needs to happen. This needs to be, number one, called out. Number two, that's actually not the way to solve the dropping white birth rate. Actually, there is a way to solve it. We'll get to that in a second if you'd like to. But we are in a situation where they're going to escalate. The closer they get to what they feel like is their backs against the wall, the more they are going to lash out. Here in America, It was the election of Barack Obama that really catalyzed this whole thing in two major ways. Number one, he's Black. Number two, during our financial crisis, Barack Obama was given a tacit mandate to bail out the people. And Barack Obama failed to do that. Instead, he didn't bail out from the bottom, he bailed out from the top. All these taxpayer dollars, upwards of $8 trillion, went to keep the banks open, which then they used to create bonuses for the same CEOs that caused this mess. Nobody got locked up, and white Americans in the Rust Belt states, we call them down here, and the red states, they actually did end up losing their homes. Now, the whole symbolism of a Black man as president looks cheap to them, because implicit in that symbolism was that a Black man would take care of the poor. Implicit in his symbolism is this the next best thing to getting Dr. Martin Luther King as president. We can't have him, so we got this Barack Obama guy, and we know that King would ride for the poor. Obama was a part of the banking cartel, and since he didn't ride for them, they were open to be dog whistled back into the racism that they had been shamed out of. So those two things happen. Barack Obama gets elected, and then he doesn't take care of the white folks who were poor-ish, who did lose their homes in the crash of 2008. Donald Trump comes in and sets fire to all the kindling that Barack Obama didn't pour water on by bailing out from the bottom to the top. And that's what kicked this whole thing back into motion. It was his failure and the racism that was already latent in the country.
And it doesn't help that you're the person that runs your country is also the biggest dog whistler.
No, he got
right?
there by dog whistling. That's what got him there.
Yes, and I say this moreover, here in Canada, they are just, they are heavily influenced by what he says and the things he says and all of
I
his
believe it.
red meat that he's throwing out. He's throwing it across the border too. He's throwing it north of the border. We've got folks walking around with hats that say "Make Canada Great Again." So I mean, they gone and made their own. Yes. Hey, stay tuned for that, family. I'll be bringing that one out. I'll be bringing that one out next week. I'm just waiting for a few things to happen so I can give you the full report. But yes, they're walking around with "Make Canada Great Again," and the whole mass immigration stuff. But the the other thing I wanted to also talk about, though, just a little bit of a pivot, is I say this moreover as well. It's you hate us, but you love our culture.
They hate you and emulate you. What does that mean?
Right. You don't like us. You don't like us. You call us all kinds of names, but you're the first people laying out in the sun trying to be brown and get brown. And, you're spending millions of dollars getting your lips plumped and your cheeks filled in and BBLs and breasts and this and that, but you can't stand us. You're flying down to Jamaica, man, and, Africa and all these places to get with those beautiful, beautiful visions of Black men and America too, by the way.
They're into Rasta. They out there renting Rasta, man. We're not going to talk about that right now.
but you just don't like us. It's like, which one is it?
Right.
Which one is it? That was the other piece I wanted to talk about, because there are more than one examples of what happens to some Black men after, things go south with them and some of the folks that they marry and get into relationships with, and the next thing you know, they're taking them for everything they have, and all of those things. Are they're writing tell-all books and telling their whole story and saying this was cathartic for me, it was therapeutic, it was like therapy writing this. Meanwhile, the Black man is like cancel culture on fleek, right? So or broke, or fired, or all of those things that happen. So it's like, Which one do you want?
Right. Well, let's talk about the roots of that, because Francis Cress Welsing, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, our departed ancestor and intellectual giant, wrote a paper called The Cress Theory of Color Confrontation, better known as the ISIS papers. So Dr. Francis Cress Welsing talked about that. And what she said in that book was they ultimately don't love themselves. She talks in that book about the writings of Europeans when they first began the age of exploration, they call it, when their ships were actually solid enough and the navigational tools got good enough to navigate across the world and back to Europe. And what they found was, and she writes about this, the envy of melanated bodies while simultaneously constructing systems that would put them superior to these melanated bodies. And navigating that cognitive dissonance leads to a form of insanity, which we are seeing right now. Because on one hand, I was told, and I'm going to use the NIGGA word, they everybody wants to be the guh, but they don't want to be the gur. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to NIG, they want to be the guh, but they don't want to be the gur. Meaning they want the swag in the walk, but they don't want the shackle that made him limp. You see what I'm saying? And that is all a part of the lack of love for self that is deep down in them because they was already sick. Malidoma Patrice Sommet wrote a great book called Of Water and Spirit. He is from Burkina Faso, from I forget the tribe that Malidoma Patrice Sommet is from, but he's from Burkina Faso. And in Water and Spirit, he analyzed white supremacist mindset from a spiritual, indigenous, African paradigm. And he said that ultimately this sickness is based on the fear of annihilation and the insanity that already existed in Europe. Now look at this. Europeans went through 2 waves of plague, the Dark Ages, and all kind of stuff. So if you couldn't beat a cough and swing a sword, you wasn't making it out of Europe. For 1,000 years, while Mansa Musa and them was you trading gold across the whole Middle East and Africa, you know what I'm saying? While the Mali, Songhai, and Ghana empires was popping, Europe was swinging swords and dealing with pox, okay? And what came out of that was the only ones that survived had a very brutalistic, what they call Malthusian way of looking at the world. Dog eat dog, cutthroat, everything is for sale, commodify everything because of the scarcity. Then they meet people who are actually spiritually healthy, Africans and the indigenous here in America. And they don't know what to do with both being supposedly superior and having these people have all the answers to their problems. And when they colonized this part of the world, they were terrified of one another. France was terrified of Spain, was terrified of Portugal, was terrified of England, was terrified of Germany because they had all felt each other's sword. It's Europe that has the history of being violent since violent. They say that's the Middle East, that's Europe. So they was all afraid for each one to get the leg up. Well, Spain said, I can't let France get the leg up, said I can't let England get the leg up, and they all raced for these resources because of the sickness that was already in Europe. And they have not overcome that. And that is what's behind the racism. And they never loved themselves enough to admit when they was wrong and take the medicine that we had to offer.
That is 100% facts. And I'm just even going to go back to slavery days.
Let's go.
They were having their way with us, the women and the men.
All the way.
Taking the hair, taking the skin, taking the teeth. Like,
right.
They were just taking. And it's like, but then you would, the last word a lot of them would hear before getting lynched or any of those other things was the N-word. But you could not stay away from us. The obsession has been real
from
the start. It has been real from the start.
From the
And you are
beginning.
absolutely right about the fear of being replaced. They call it
Right.
the great replacement theory.
Which is
You
a
know,
projection from them having committed genocide against the indigenous. It's a
yep,
projection. It's the guilty conscience confessing while it's projecting.
yep. Yep. And so what I will say to this woman, and then we'll go to the comments because the comments are alive.
I bet they
Um,
popping right now. I bet.
oh, they're popping. They are popping. I would just say, listen, I appreciate the acknowledgement. I do feel like it has more to do with probably even though she says she fought against anti-black racism within her work and
Mhm,
whatnot, I do think it's once she brought forth some black
mhm.
babies.
Right, right.
That's when it became real for her. And it's like, oh, hold on, I'm seeing the difference. You know,
Mhm.
I could only imagine her being out with her white kids and her black kids and people thinking she was just babysitting or she was just the nanny or something like that.
Or had
Like,
adopted them kids, right?
right, they're not your kids, those little black kids. No way. So so I will just say, I'm not going to bash her for coming out.
Right, right, right. I can't
Appreciate
do
it.
that.
Absolutely do. Some of them can really try to be allies. I appreciate it. All I would say is while you're educating yourself, because a lot of black people are saying, I'm tired of educating you. I'm
Facts,
tired of teaching
facts,
you
facts.
what it's like. I'm tired of this DEI. I'm tired.
Right.
Why should I have to teach you how to treat another human being like a human being? So a lot of people are saying, I'm tired. So you go do the work yourself. All the resources are there. But hey, she's asking whoever wants to help and oblige, by all means, please do.
Right,
But
right.
thank
And
you just the same.
right. And I feel kind of the same way. My thing is, here's the thing that I have learned from being the target of racism for literally all my life. I will not pay forward the sin of bigotry, meaning when I judge folks, everything that they can't control is off the table. Like I said in the beginning, my problem is not with the skin. My problem is not with the eyes, the hair, the nose, the lips, none of that. That's not my problem. It is the mindset of supremacy. And so the work I have done on myself, like I don't throw out like fun little slurs for like European descendant people. I personally don't do that. That's not really my bag. But I don't also be mad at black folks who don't have the bandwidth to sift through all of this. I'm not mad at black folks for being like, player, teach yourself, Google free. You know what I'm saying? I'm not mad at black folks for not having the bandwidth for that. Generally speaking, I do. And I can have these conversations with European descended folks because I understand I'm talking about a mindset that has been acquired. So I'll put it like this. If all European descended folk were like this lady in her current mindset, we'd be a lot further along. If all it was just ignorance and not knowing and not hatred in the heart and not the systems that back up the ignorance, if more of them was like that, our life would be easier. So I want to congratulate the progress and applaud at least the vulnerability because it ain't safe for allies. Let's keep it a buck.
I was just
And
about to say, I
it ain't
wonder who
safe for
her people
allies.
are
That
probably going to come for her.
that
Yes.
lady who just got popped in Minneapolis, look, it ain't sweet for allies at all. And a lot
Nope.
of us don't have compassion for that either. If you're black and don't care about that, I'm not mad at you. I get you have gone through a lot and don't have the bandwidth, but I can tell you, allyship is not a safe game, especially now. With that being said, I'm glad that she's expanding the conversation. I hope that she ain't mad at the black folks who ain't ready to talk, because a lot of us ain't ready
That's
to
it.
have that conversation.
That's it. Again, appreciate it. But
Right.
yeah, a lot of
Appreciate
people
you.
are like, we're not, because I was even reading the comments, and a lot of people are like, look, you're on your own.
I ain't
I'm
mad
not
at black
helping
folks who
you.
don't got the bandwidth. I ain't mad
Thank
at that.
you. Next, pretty much. So I'm just gonna go to the comments here. Militia says, trust me, we want to be away from them way more than they want to be away from us. Well, I think that speaks more to the obsession, right? Let's see. There's somebody here. There's a troll here that's I'm not giving any life to. That basically thinks we should go back to Africa. But that's the
Dude,
ignorance, right?
you can pay for it since you brought me to the party. How about that? You want me to go back to Africa? Go ahead and take me since you brought me. How about that?
Is what I'm saying. And also Africa is always the choice. Not that I listen, is the place, okay? It's the motherland.
By the way, Africa low-key popping. That's why they vacation there all the time.
Okay. Okay. And by the way, the first human that was created
Ever?
in what continent?
Africa.
Okay. So the I guess the always just thinking that every black person needs to go back to Africa gladly, but you also go back to where you came from.
Or you could go to England. That's
Yeah.
also available. You could go to Holland by all means.
And when we do go, don't follow us, okay?
Right.
Don't come over there colonizing because y'all like to do all that too. Anyhow, moving on. Thank you. Next.
Right.
MPK says that happened to me before as well. That's why I don't associate. Okay, so they're saying that they experienced racism. They're obsessed.
You ain't got the bandwidth. I get it.
Obsessed. Facts Only Friday. Hey, that's what we're gonna call it. Thank you. Facts Only Friday with Emma and Tej. There we go.
Let's go.
Somebody said your audio was off, but that's because of the windstorm over here. So please forgive me. It had kind of subsided, but it's really bad. Like when you get an alert, it's bad. And people's powers are out everywhere. And that's winter in Canada. We get all kinds of wonky things. So we apologize for Tej, but he's back. Let's see. This person, this troll is just going on and on and on.
That's what's up.
Leave him alone. You should consider. Oh, that's the troll.
Hold on. Let me just say this: when it comes to trolls, especially the racist trolls, I realized something about the most racist people, Emma. I don't have to tell them to go to hell because they already there. This is what's crazy about this. The most hate is not heaven inside. Hate is not enlightenment. Hatred is not hope. It's not peace. It's not nothing. The people who are most willing to comment and troll and be real obsessed with black folks and want to commit hateful acts ain't had a moment of peace. And guess who gave them that? Their ancestors. Because they learned through environment that these people who are innocent are in fact their enemies when we're not. And so when they act out, come on now, if nobody who lynches somebody is happy, nobody who throws a rock,
you can't possibly be.
These people who are literally obsessed with us, afraid that we're going to do this and realizing that they did it to us first and don't want to admit that, voting for Trump, thinking that they're going to get this golden age that is definitely not coming, and then being disappointed by Trump and then crying about it, crashing out and causing active shootings. These people are in hell.
Oh,
racism put them in hell already. I ain't got to tell you to go nowhere. You're already there.
Yeah, and honestly, I always say anybody who would have that much hate in them to be yelling, screaming, hollering, saying all those kinds of things, you are the one that's not happy with yourself.
You're not happy.
Exactly. So, I always say, like, people who talk that way, you're probably just have nothing really going on for yourself.
They low vibration, as Kellen said. Shout out to Brother Kellen. They just low vibration.
Low vibration, yeah.
Low vibe. And I'm sorry, but your ancestors gave you that. Take it up with them. Leave us alone.
Jim is agreeing with us. Having what you want and just still not being happy
is wild word.
Sheila, thank you very much, Sheila. Appreciate the super chat. She says President Trump doesn't care. Somebody is responding to the troll.
Give him that work. Go ahead, give him that work.
Yeah, if they're so superior, how a lack of okay, we're not gonna even talk about that one. No. I had one of the folks approach me at the gym asking how can she help end racism and how more of her people could be allies. I told her, talk to your people, and I gladly walked off. Okay.
But then, all right, but let's talk about that, because sometimes when they only amongst themselves and they already misguided, and then they try to do the thing to stop racism, and they go in the whole wrong direction. You know what I'm saying? So Listen, James Baldwin said that whether we like it or not, we're teaching white folks. Whether we like it or not. The new woke school says, man, Google it, I ain't got time. But the fact is, we actually are tacitly, whether we want to or not, and we ain't signed up for none of this. We still teaching. And they can do the wrong thing with the right heart if we're not careful. So I just want us to think about that also. And they be looking wrong, and then they be getting fired and don't know why. Like, I thought this was the right thing to do. It's like, no, it's actually wrong. And then it's like, talk to some black folks. So black folks won't talk to me. Then it's like it catch 22. You feel me? So it's like James Baldwin said, we're always teaching. And partially it's because they always look it. So I think that we need to keep that in mind. We're teaching whether we want to or not.
Yes, and this was a prime example of a black person that said, not interested. I'm not my job. But then on the flip side of that, we want this to be eradicated. We want it to stop. And then you have somebody that's actually willing to learn something. So, I think it depends on who you get and on what good day. If it were me, because I've been asked, I've done keynote speaking for the city of Toronto, for example, and I've been asked to come on and speak about Emancipation Day and Juneteenth and things like that. And I don't mind doing it for a good fee. I don't mind doing it.
Right.
I mean,
cut that check and we talk some about, we talk about somebody.
Why not? I mean, you want my knowledge and your willingness to learn. I mean, does teachers get paid? Don't they? Shoot,
I'm teaching,
right? So again, I was just saying, there's going to be some that'll say yes. There's going to be some that'll say no. There's going to be some that will not have the turn the cheek moment. They just won't have that mentality. They're not going to be Peter.
Ain't got the bandwidth to turn the cheek sometime. Be ready.
I mean, they will be Peter. They won't be Jesus telling Peter no and putting the ear back on. You know what I'm saying? So, not everybody will have that. So
and check this out. One thing that could really end racism is if more white folks understood that it doesn't benefit them like they think it does. In fact, it actually harms them. There's a book out right now called Dying of Whiteness. It's a real book written by a white man who's talking about the fact that the disappointed expectations of what they were taught whiteness would bring is bringing about what they call deaths of despair. So, here in America, we got the opioid crisis like a mug. Opioids in certain places like West Virginia and Alabama and Mississippi is killing white folks at wartime numbers. And the demographics is if you are white, college educated, non-college educated, middle age, meaning MAGA prime, white, non-college age, college educated, middle aged white folks have the highest levels of alcoholism, suicide. They got the highest levels of opioid addiction and overdose, fentanyl problems. You feel me? And it's all based on the idea that they thought that they was going to be better off than they forebear generation of white men. And then Fox News and them told them to blame black folks. But the truth is, the reason why they're not better off is because the white man way up there not only took away their pension, their retirement, their livable wage, but then pointed them at what ain't really the problem. And since it ain't getting solved, they are self-deleting. Dying of Whiteness is a real book. It don't serve them. They need to go ahead and understand that. That actually hustles backwards.
And the word that comes to mind in the word of the weekend is fragility.
Fragility, man. No resilience.
Exactly. Jay McClinton 8 says racism is expensive and has a ripple effect. King Noble 83 says, Brother Tej, I respect your intellect, but I don't have the patience.
Hey, bro, look, like I said, this is going to be 11 times because I said it 10 times already. If you black and ain't got the bandwidth, I ain't mad at you. We got a lot to deal with right now.
We can't.
I ain't mad at you.
They want to come up with the term black fatigue, and it's like, please, just miss me with that. That's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. But it's like the fragility of it all, And I always say, one of the folks, and let me be clear, I'm not painting them all, but the ones who behave this way, the Karens, the Beckys. I always say their tears is one of the most dangerous liquids in the world. So, it's not every Black person that's going to be okay with it and be trusting and what have you. So I appreciate those that are willing to learn. I encourage you to continue to do so, but with the L of learn, also adopt the L of listen, please, because that also helps. Okay.
They do.
Mr. Wilson is real. He been on the compound, gentlemen. I'm hip.
Let's go.
Yes. You know what? I'm sorry I can't get to everybody. We've run out of time, but the chat has been alive. We appreciate you joining us. I see that everybody's loving our talking points, Brother Tej.
Mhm.
And,
Yes, sir.
Brother Tej and I were saying, Fridays will be, what did they call it? Factful Fridays? What was it called?
Right. All facts Fridays and nothing but facts Fridays. Something.
Yeah,
Factual
with
Fridays. Factual Friday. You
Factual
know what I'm talking
Fridays with M and
Yeah.
Tej. So,
For
we'll
sure.
be back, God
Yep.
willing, next Friday with another hot topic. And we appreciate you joining us. We have
Yeah.
run out of time. It was such a great conversation. I appreciated it. Thanks so much for being my partner in this, Brother
Absolutely,
Tej.
Emma. For
And
sure.
Facts Only Friday. That's it.
Facts Only
Thank you,
Friday.
Unknown Concept. Facts Only Friday. Thank
Facts
you,
Only
Mike
Friday.
Grace.
Let's go.
Thank you, Buckhorse. Thank you for joining. Thank you, King Noble. He says, great conversation. Peace to all. Peace to you
Yep.
guys. We will love you and leave you until next Friday.
Mhm.
Until then, please download our African Diaspora News Channel app and also check out Tej. He's on here bringing some great content,
Hey.
great stuff. And also
Theo
check out
Cyrus Rising. Yep.
everybody else on
Mhm.
this channel. Everybody's crushing it. So be sure to support everybody. Appreciate everyone. Have a great weekend. See you next week. And I'll see you tomorrow, really.
Right.
Bye, everybody.
Peace, y'all.